Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner here on Tales of Home? We retell those moments honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. By late afternoon, the vineyard had turned that honeyed color you only get in Oregon at the end of summer rows of pinot vines catching light like thin green glass dust, lifting off the service road, a little indie trio doing their best to turn Stand By Me into first dance romance. The tasting barn had been strung with Edison bulbs and cheap bunting that somehow looked expensive against weathered cedar. People wore linen like they had been born into it. Evelyn Brooks stood just outside the crowd with a paper cup of coffee. She didn't particularly want watching her daughter Maya drift through congratulations in a white tea-length dress. She'd tried to keep the dress simple, and somehow that made her the most luminous person on the lawn. Grant Whitaker. Tall toothpaste smile sleeves rolled just enough to show forearms that said, "I fix things," worked the room without seeming to. He had a way of angling his body to face whoever he was talking to and at the same time surveying everybody else. He was generous with eye contact, quick with names. "Evelyn," he'd said earlier, "you raised a remarkable woman." He said it like a compliment and a closing argument. Evelyn could admire the polish. She'd spent 25 years staring at polished men across varnished tables, claimants, adjusters, the occasional CEO, hunting for the seam where a story didn't line up. Most people were good at telling you what they wanted you to hear. A few were excellent. Grant was excellent. Leo, 6 years old and armed with a fistful of confetti, darted in and out of the adults like a kid who trusted his legs more than he trusted the world. He'd worn his bow tie for precisely the length of the ceremony and discarded it as soon as he saw cake. He had his mother's eyes and his late father's habit of noticing things other people didn't. The DJ announced the toasts, and the crowd funneled toward the lawn, facing a simple wooden riser set up as a podium. A cluster of mason jar centerpieces ringed the base. Evelyn started forward to rescue one that was about to get kicked over and lost sight of Leo for a beat. She found him where she should have expected, wedged under the riser shoes, scuffing the new plywood eye level with a world that grown-ups forgot existed. "Kiddo," she whispered, crouching out. "Now, you'll get splinters." Leo didn't move. He was completely still in that serious prehistoric way small boys get when they've spotted something that doesn't belong. He reached out and slid an object toward her, a leather billfold, scuffed and expensive, the kind that tries not to call attention to itself. The wallet had fallen open just enough to show an edge of laminated plastic. Evelyn didn't touch it at first. She held the riser skirt back with 2 fingers and leaned in, letting the light do the work. Photo, male, square jaw, pale eyes. Not bad lighting. The name, though, she could read the bottom third of it. Ah, Reed. The first name was hidden under the fold. Not Grant Whitaker. Not close. "Where'd you get that?" she asked softly. "It slid," Leo said. When the man stepped up, it slid out and went under. "And there's a paper." He pointed with absolute confidence. There was a paper. Not paper exactly. Thick stock perforated edge, a boarding pass. She could make out the logo, Northern Vista. Departure Portland Union Station. Destination Seattle. Suite car. The name printed bold above a barcode, Noah Reed. Evelyn's heart didn't kick. That was something she'd trained out of herself years ago. Instead, she ran the checklist she'd carried since her 30s. Don't touch first. Photograph. Observe who's watching. Decide nothing until you've seen more than you think you need. She took out her phone and cupped it low, a grandmother pretending to adjust her messages. 2 quick shots, then a third with her thumb bracing the fabric so the light caught the laminate clean. She let the skirt fall back into place and looked up. Quinn, the best man, allegedly, the one introduced with a line about college buddies, was watching her from across the lawn. He had a face built to blend close-cut hair, good shoes, a tie that cost exactly as much as it should. He lifted his glass in a tiny private salute, the kind of motion that could be friendliness if you wanted it to be. Evelyn returned a small smile that said she had no idea what he meant. Out she told Leo, again lighter this time, and helped him scoot backward into the sunlight. She put a hand on his head, felt the heat of his scalp bent like she was tying his laces. "You don't mention the wallet," she murmured. "Not to anyone, not even Mom, not now." Leo nodded as if she'd asked him to guard a secret about Santa. "Okay," he said, which in Leo meant it will be done. He looked past her to where Grant had stepped onto the riser hand on Maya's waist, as if she were an idea he'd just had and meant to keep. "Grandma," Leo said, voice small and flat. His eyes don't smile. A murmur rolled through the crowd, and then quieted as the first toast began. The vineyard owner told a story about terroir and marriage that would have landed better with fewer metaphors. Evelyn straightened and laughed, where she should laugh, aware of Quinn drifting to the edge of the riser with a napkin he didn't need, aware of Grant's polite attention as if he'd been bathed in it since birth. She found a shady patch by the farm tables and pulled a pen from her clutch. NR, Union Station, Suite. She blocked her phone with her body and zoomed the photos far enough to read the print under. Noah, she wrote. Read. The picture in the license, if that's what it was not a younger Grant. It was Grant. Same jawline, same notch at the eyebrow. A different name attached with the kind of confidence people reserve for their real one. Evelyn, someone called. A cousin of Maya's appeared with a plate of cheese like an offering. He seems wonderful, she said, eyes on Grant. Maya looks so happy. Evelyn agreed. There was no point in being the kind of mother who didn't. Happiness is a fact. The next part is interpretation. Grant stepped down from the riser to laughter and soft clinking. He drifted through the thicket of well-wishers and found Evelyn as if the entire party were a chessboard he had memorized. You holding up? He asked, warm as a porch light. I know this is a lot. It is, she said. All good things usually are. She let him see her admire him. People tell you more when they feel seen. He turned to include the group behind her thumb, grazing her elbow in a way that probably worked on most people. While he spoke about the Vineyard's Pinot program like he had planted it himself, Evelyn noted the details that mattered to her, a white crescent of skin where a ring would have tanned a line if it had been there longer than a day. The right cuff just slightly softer than the left, as if rolled and unrolled through nervous habit. The smallest delay before he answered a question about Wharton that a graduate would not have needed. Quinn orbited behind Grant's shoulder. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. He rested a hand on the riser as if to steady it and accidentally or not nudged the skirt back into position with the side of his shoe. Evelyn watched the fabric settle easy as a curtain. Excuse me, she said after a moment, because you never learn anything by clinging to a conversation. She took Leo's hand, detoured to the beverage station, and swapped her cold coffee for a lemonade that Leo decided was his. She let him drink half and took the other, thinking about the ticket stock in her photo, the station name, the timing printed under board. A breeze came up from the south and brought the smell of hot earth and old oak. Somewhere behind the barn, a power inverter hummed. Maya, radiant and full of future, laughed at something the maid of honor said and covered her mouth like a girl for a half-second. Evelyn felt something like vertigo and put it somewhere safe. Her phone buzzed. Riley Nash. She hadn't texted him in months, not since he'd sent a photo of an ugly carp he claimed was a trout answered in one line. Call when you can. She slid the phone away and looked up in time to catch Quinn's glance again. He had that polite expression men wear when they believe they're ahead on points. Evelyn lifted her lemonade as if to toast him back her face, the picture of a mother satisfied with the world as it was. Evelyn woke before the light, the house shaped by familiar sounds, the refrigerator's soft click, the neighbor's sprinklers wheezing to life, a freight horn miles off riding the Willamette like a low chord. She ground coffee the old way because the burr grinder was loud enough to wake Leo, and she needed the kind of quiet where details arrange themselves. On the kitchen table she laid out what she had: 2 photos of an opened wallet, one clean enough to read Northern Vista, and Noah Reed one, catching the jawline she had been watching all afternoon, labeled with a different name. Beside them she placed a grocery receipt, a pen, and her phone face down, a still life of suspicion. Leo padded in with dinosaur pajamas, and bed hair climbed onto a stool and folded into her side without a word. His weight was the exact measure of mourning. "There's pancakes if you're fast," she said. He nodded like someone accepting a mission, slid to the floor, and went to wash his hands. She flipped 3 circles of batter, added chocolate chips because there was no reason not to, and listened for anything in the house that didn't belong. Her phone buzzed across the table. Riley Nash. "You still write the best 2 a.m. texts. Call when the boy's busy." She caught Leo's eye. 10 minutes of cartoons, she said. Deal. He negotiated for 12. She settled at 11. He grinned as if he'd taken a city. With Leo occupied, she put Riley on speaker and kept her voice low. "I've got a wedding wallet with a boarding pass to Northern Vista out of Union Station," she said. "Name on the pass isn't the name on the groom." "That's a sentence," Riley replied. She could hear him moving desk drawers, the soft slap of a legal pad. "What's the alias?" "Noah Reed. The public name is Grant Whitaker." Paper whisked under the palm. "Reed has almost nothing, vanishing footprint 5, maybe 6 years back. But I've got a few items that rhyme with this song. 3 widows in 3 states funds redirected to children's therapy initiatives. The money flows through 501c3s, with board members who exist the way clouds exist. Names: Pine Bridge Children Wellness, Rivers and Roads, Child Health, Oak Valley Behavioral Fund, all clean filings, all ghost donors, all good intentions on paper. Evelyn wrote Pinebridge and underlined it. There's a kid's trust in play, she said. Health education carve-outs in the language. If you wanted an early distribution and you needed something that looked like care, you build a bridge out of receipts. Riley exhaled. You're sure about the boy? I'm sure about my grandson. You're going to the station, he said. Not a question. Buy a platform pass or a day ticket, whatever they call it now. Don't try to be clever with security. And Evelyn, I know, she said, hands off. If there's a scene, it won't be mine. She ended the call with a small pulse of adrenaline she filed where it couldn't shake her hands. On the counter, the pancakes were cooling. She cut one into quarters, made a face, until Leo laughed and watched him eat like laughter could go with him as insulation. At 9, she phoned Maya. Kept the tone breezy. He ran hard yesterday, she said. Let him hang with me this morning. You two enjoy your brunch victory lap. You're a saint, Maya said, grateful in the way of new brides counting favors. Grant's grabbing our overnight bag from his place. We don't board until later. I'll swing by before we go. Text when you're close, Evelyn said. She didn't mention Union Station or trains or boarding passes with someone else's name. The day did not need more nouns. Mrs. Alvarez from next door took Leo at noon with cookies and a warning that cartoons had a ceiling. Evelyn changed into a denim jacket that hid pockets like a magic trick, checked the battery on her phone, printed the photos at the Walgreens kiosk down the hill, because paper still makes a point, and drove toward the station with that constricted feeling in her ribs that she only let herself call focus. Portland Union Station kept its posture no matter the decade brick clock tower go-by train, in neon tile floors that held every footstep. The large room smelled faintly of old polish and coffee brewed on the wrong temperature. People moved in diagonals, families with roller bags, students with backpacks, couples doing a last-minute inventory of everything that felt like adventure when you said it out loud. Evelyn bought a day ticket and a lounge pass with cash because she liked how small transactional friction slowed the world. The attendant slid her a key card without looking up from a screen. Doors are on the right, he said. She thanked him and climbed the low stairs into carpet and better light the lounge, a pocket of upholstery and hushed voices. She saw them immediately because she knew how to look Maya with her hair low and smooth. Grant angled to face her, a leather folio open, a laptop glowing with a cursor in a signature field. Quinn stood half back, the picture of support, one hand on the handle of a small black case, as if he were guarding something delicate from the draft. Evelyn crossed the room without hurry. She stopped at the edge of their table. Maya, she said, delighted. A mother surprised by coincidence that wasn't. I thought you'd be at home finishing cake. Maya's smile arrived, then faltered half a degree at the sight of her mother's eyes. We're early, she said. Grant wanted to handle some paperwork. Grant finished warmth set to medium. Pinebridge children, wellness is allowing us into a limited tranche this month. It's a tax-advantaged position. We move now, we save later. Pinebridge, Evelyn repeated as if tasting a new varietal. That's a mouthful. It's a foundation, he said, a patient man, explaining a good deed. We've been talking about setting something up for Maya's class enrichment scholarships. This gets the ball rolling. Evelyn took the seat across from him without asking, because asking is a way to lose time. She set her day ticket on the table beside the folio and let the corner of a Walgreens photo peek. What exactly is the instrument, she asked. Donor-advised fund, restricted grant, pass-through to a program. Grant's smile did not dim. A pre-commitment, he said. We park assets in a low-visibility vehicle while we structure the rest. Low visibility, Evelyn said, and kept her tone the gentlest kind of curious. Who's on the board? Seasoned folks, he said. Former hospital admin, a retired pediatrician, a CPA who's dull in all the right ways. Quinn's gaze flicked to her hand to the photo's white border back to Grant. The small black case at his feet shifted, as if something inside had weight and edges. Maya looked between them, that old crease forming at the bridge of her nose. Mom, she said, wanting her to behave the way mothers should behave in movies. It's just paperwork. Evelyn nodded. Of course. And I'm just asking the questions you'll be asked later by someone who doesn't love you. She slid the Walgreens print the rest of the way into view. The license photo, the words Noah Reed, the bold font of Northern Vista above a barcode. Maya inhaled like a person stepping into cold water. Grant didn't move at all, which was something to write down later. That he said evenly isn't mine. The jawline is, Evelyn said. The ticket is. The name isn't. Quinn set the black case on the chair beside him and reached to steady a coffee cup that didn't need steadying. He bumped the edge of the table instead, and the case fell open, not wide, but enough for a sliver, a second phone wrapped in rubber like it didn't want to be found, a stack of plastic cards that didn't look like credit. A lounge attendant drifted nearer on instinct, calibrated to the frequency of trouble. Everything all right here? We're fine, Grant said smoothly, eyes never leaving Evelyn's. A little premarital counseling with the mother of the bride. Postmarital, Evelyn said. She kept her hands folded, kept her voice in the room's register. Maya, look at me. Maya did. You don't sign anything today. Not for scholarships, not for enrichment, not for Santa. If this is as clean as he says, it will be clean tomorrow. Grant's expression shifted a degree toward wounded. You've been through a lot, he said to Maya, a tone calibrated to the exact note of fatigue. Grief makes people see patterns. I'm the man who loves you. I'm not a test you need to pass. Maya's mouth softened and then sharpened. I'm not signing, she said. Her voice surprised her with how steady it sounded. Not here. A pause. The kind where choices choose themselves. Grant's hands left the table. He sat back, breathed once, put a pleasant mask back on the way you hang a coat. Of course, he said lightly. We're ahead of schedule anyway. The attendant retreated. Quinn closed the black case like a yawn, clicked the latch, and picked it up again, knuckles pale. Evelyn slipped the photo away. She didn't crow. She didn't smile. She stood, smoothed the denim at her hip, and felt the lounge keycard press her palm. Walk with me, she said to Maya, gentle as a hand on a child's back. They moved toward the tall windows that led in the train yard rails, veering like options, a gleam of stainless steel under a sky that couldn't decide between sun and overcast. Maya pressed her forehead to the glass for a second and closed her eyes. What if I'm wrong? She whispered. Then you're careful, Evelyn said. Nobody ever got hurt by reading twice. Behind them, Quinn spoke into his sleeve in a voice too soft to carry. Grant was already on his feet, folio under his arm, the air around him cooling 10 degrees. A departure announcement rolled across the room, Northern Vista Track 4 boarding now, and heads lifted the way they always do, at the sound of leaving. I need to get my bag, Maya said. It's at the desk. Go, Evelyn said. I'll be here. Maya stepped away light on her feet, like a woman not yet decided. Grant watched her go, then turned that even sunlight smile back on Evelyn, as if he had never been anything but a good man on a good day. You always travel with photos, he asked. Only when the lighting's this flattering, she said. They held each other's eyes long enough to name it. Then Evelyn picked up her ticket and her keycard and walked with her daughter toward the gate, where the conductor waited, punching small crescents into stock, as if story and schedule were the same thing. The long silver cars stood steady under the clock tower doors, open to steps that folded like invitations. The room emptied by degrees the way rooms do when a train is ready, the sound of wheels in the throat of the station gathering itself into motion. The Northern Vista sighed once and moved like a long thought leaving the station. Evelyn and Maya took the last pair of seats on the right, in the sightseer car glass roof, arcing over their heads, river light sliding along the ceiling in sheets. The rails hummed into one note, then another, and Portland fell backward at the pace of trees. Grant and Quinn set up 2 rows behind them, close enough to overhear, but not close enough to be accused of it. Grant kept the leather folio flat on his lap like a placid dog. Quinn parked his small black case by the aisle and rested his hand on it as if the case needed reassuring. The Willamette widened into confluence, the brown-green line where the Columbia took it all away. Barges moved like patient furniture. A heron lifted, shook itself into flight, and smoothed out above the water until it didn't look like work anymore. Maya let her head fall back against the seat and exhaled through her nose, as if that might make a better version of oxygen. I didn't sleep, she said. Her voice wasn't pleading. It was a weather report. I kept hearing the song they played for the first dance. Evelyn turned her wrist so the watch face caught a dull band of sun. You don't need to be eloquent, she said. You just need to be awake. A cafe attendant in a navy vest rolled past with coffee and pretzels. Evelyn bought one of each and asked for an extra cup. The attendant eyed her day pass and smiled like a person who has decided to like you. Evelyn slipped a tip into the jar and watched the attendant clock the people at the tables as if they were regulars she hadn't met yet. The attendant's gaze snagged on Quinn's case, then moved on, practiced and non-committal. Her phone buzzed. Riley again, sending a packet. Not pretty. Look for prepared by. The file came in pieces, compressed scans, clumsy photos, PDFs with sideways pages. She tapped one open. Pinebridge Children Wellness at the top, a return address that when she zoomed in turned out to be a mailbox store with a suite number. A ledger that wasn't a ledger, more like a collage, donations and grants, out everything soft around the edges where you would want them sharp. Another file, a photograph of a gala in a hotel ballroom with too many uplights. Grant Beard, heavier hair combed another direction, stood beside a woman in an emerald dress with a donor placard the size of a dessert plate. Rivers and Roads, Child Health. A caption visible only in the camera's memory. Miami 2019. The woman's name appeared in an event program Riley had circled in red in another image. Deceased 6 months later, a line item in a newspaper that didn't have the space to be suspicious. A third file, a sworn statement on lined paper from someone who signed as M. Carlson, edges torn where it had been yanked out of a spiral notebook. We created the boards on paper, the statement read. We used licensed names from people we paid to lend them. The money never touched a clinic. In the margin, a second hand had written in block letters, prepared by Patrick Hale, CPA. Below that, Ein XXXX crossed out, reused underlined twice. Riley's text pinged again. Hale shows up on filings for 3 different child health charities. He's not window dressing. He's the window. Evelyn looked out at the river long enough to steady the ground in her head, and then handed the phone to Maya without commentary. Maya started to pass it back like the screen was hot, then stopped herself and scrolled jaw pushing forward the way it did when she had to get through a tough parent-teacher conference without saying something unprofessional. She reached the photograph from Miami and paused. She looks like me, Maya said so quietly Evelyn almost didn't catch it. In the photo, the woman's hair had been styled into that universal curl every wedding vendor knew how to produce. Her hand on Grant's arm said familiarity without claiming anything else. Maya handed the phone back, then changed her mind and took it again. Who is Patrick Hale? On paper, Evelyn said someone boring. She liked Emerald, Maya said, as if she needed to get that recorded. She gave the phone back and stared straight ahead. The train leaned slightly into a bend and the river leaned with it. Grant stood and came down the aisle with the folio smiling like a man taking food to a neighbor. Walk with me, he said to Maya, an invitation dressed as a question that was not a question. Maya didn't move. We can talk here, she said. Grant's smile didn't change. He turned his attention to Evelyn as if she were a small crowd he needed to keep friendly. I get it, he said. You lost Richard. There's a gravity to grief. You look for it everywhere, so you're not surprised again. You're testing metaphors on the wrong person, Evelyn said. Grant set the folio on the small table between their seats and opened it. A tablet lay inside. A document bloomed on it with margins like a government form and language like a legal lullaby. He tapped a yellow field, and a signature line pulsed. This authorizes a transfer to Pinebridge for an earmarked classroom initiative, he said to Maya. We've discussed this. It's your idea about the reading corner and the summer program. It's a way to start. Where does the money wait? Evelyn asked. In a donor-advised fund, Grant said immediately, which would have been comforting except for how quickly he had it. Pinebridge has a partnership with a financial firm. It's all overseen by a board. Prepared by Evelyn asked, and it was possible to ask that without sounding coy. Grant's eyes didn't flicker. Patrick Hale, CPA. He said it as if he were offering a dentist's name. He's consulted on plenty of legit foundations. You can call him. He'll bore you until you apologize for doubting him. Quinn shifted behind him, just a small adjustment, like a man resetting a shoulder. His case was still under his hand. The cafe attendant stopped by and set a receipt in front of Evelyn without being asked. Printer's cranky, she said in a low voice. But if you need a page, we can try. Thank you, Evelyn said, surprised into a smile. She slid a 5 into the tip jar as payment for mercy and something like solidarity. Maya picked up the tablet. She didn't sign. She scrolled. The words looked like the kind of words people hire to make other words behave. There was a clause about restricted use, a clause about program evaluation, a clause about immediate transfer upon acknowledgement of receipt. Down at the bottom under a block of fine print, prepared by, appeared again with a signature that tried too hard to look casual. Patrick Hale, CPA. Maya looked at Grant. He was right there. Pleasant, patient, confident, like a man who knows the train schedule and all the trains are on time. Why is the address a UPS store, she asked. She kept her tone simple. It sounded like a question you ask a teenager about the dishes. Because the main office is being renovated, Grant said, and he almost got away with it. Temporary. Maya's mouth moved in a shape that wasn't quite a laugh. We moved to a mailbox store when our kitchen flooded, she said. We all do what we have to. Exactly, Grant said, relieved, and then saw from her face he had understood the line wrong. The train slowed. A conductor's baritone filled the car. Vancouver, Washington. Brief stop. Out the window, the Columbia spread wide and metallic. The station platform came up clean and sunstruck. People stood. Luggage handles clicked open. The air conditioning blew a breath like cold chalk. Maya set the tablet on the table as if it were something she didn't want to own anymore. She stood. I'm getting off, she said. Grant blinked once, not confusion but recalculation. At Vancouver, not here, she said. She reached past him for her tote, then bent for her small suitcase, and didn't look surprised when Quinn was already holding it by the handle. I've got that, Quinn said, voice at that volume men used to keep things pleasant in rooms with glass. Maya took her suitcase back without a word. Quinn looked at Grant. Grant didn't look away. The case under Quinn's other hand shifted again with its own little gravity. Evelyn stood too. "We won't be dramatic," she said, "not because drama is wrong, but because facts don't need it." Grant stepped half a pace into the aisle, his voice lowered like radio in the late hours. "You're scared," he said to Maya. "That's okay. First big choices always feel like stepping off something." "Then don't ask me to step blind," she said. Her hands weren't shaking. That wasn't defiance. It was mercy given to herself. Passengers edged past, making the aisle a river. The smell of hot brake pads came through the vents. Evelyn moved with the current, Maya in front of her, Grant behind, with Quinn ghosting at his shoulder. At the door, the conductor tilted his cap in a small, habitual courtesy that civilization depends on. On the platform, heat came up from the concrete like a second sun. The river threw light in slats through the station's girders. People traded places like a dance they'd learned in childhood. Maya stepped into that geometry, and out of it again onto the safer, duller square of shade under a painted eave. When Evelyn glanced back into the car through the open door, Quinn had his phone not to his ear but near his mouth, the way people do when they're talking to a jacket. The car's air conditioning pushed his words into the platform air, just enough to catch a name. "Hale," he said. "At Union." She brought the mother. "No, not yet." The paperwork. Grant behind him was smiling at a family with a stroller like any nice man on a trip starts his day. He wasn't looking at them. He was watching the reflection in the glass to see who was watching him. The conductor called all aboard with a voice made for it. Evelyn and Maya stood aside to let the waiting line pass. A boy with a souvenir conductor's hat grinned and held up a paper ticket to be punched. The conductor obliged, cutting a perfect half-moon and giving it back as if it were a coin you could spend. Maya set her suitcase down and rested both hands on the handle like a person pausing in a kitchen, deciding whether to take the cookies out. She could have cried. She didn't. The absence of tears felt like an accomplishment she hadn't planned for. Evelyn put a hand at the small of her back, not to direct, only to locate. The platform under them thudded once as the cars took in slack and began to pull. The long train went by slowly enough for faces to be frames. Quinn's for a second expression wiped back to neutral. Grant's in another window, pleasant and open, then gone behind a row of vinyl headrests. When the last car cleared the far end of the platform, the rails sang one brief high note and settled. The river went about its business. A gull on a light pole shook itself like someone waking in a chair. Maya lifted the suitcase again. "I hate that he chose a foundation with the word children in it," she said. "Like a costume." Evelyn nodded. "He likes good words," she said. "They're easy to carry." The station quieted after the leaving in that particular way stations do. On the bench under the eave, a woman folded an old map along old creases. Somewhere deeper in the building, a radio gave 3 bars of static and then found a voice. Maya adjusted the strap of her tote on her shoulder and squared her stance the way she did on the first day of school, when all the kids looked taller than they were in June. She turned toward the station doors. Evelyn matched her step without comment. The air inside the concourse was cooler, the floor scuffed in the arcs people make when they hesitate and then go on. The reader board clicked to a new line and held it. A child tugged his father's sleeve and asked something about trains. Not the kind of question adults answer right away, because the answer is for the child, not the adult. Evelyn let the door swing shut behind them and pressed her phone face down against her palm until it warmed. She could feel her pulse in the heel of her hand. The edges of Riley's packet were still bright in her mind, photographs, filings, the name printed where names go when they want to look official. Prepared by Patrick Hale, CPA. She placed the image next to Quinn's mouth, shaping the same name in a car full of strangers, and did not have to force them to fit. They crossed the concourse together, not in a hurry, not slow-moving, the way you move when you've decided to keep your balance, and the floor has agreed to help. The door to the street swung open on its heavy hinge, and the day outside met them with the blunt, ordinary heat of the river town at noon. Heat met them square in the face when the concourse door swung shut. A pickup rattled past on the street, flagging a tarp that snapped like a sail. Maya shaded her eyes with the edge of her hand. Evelyn cupped her phone in her palm and dialed. Riley answered on the first breath. "Your hunch grew legs," he said. Camera hit on a locker in a downtown Seattle garage, 4th and James top deck. Rental paid with a prepaid card tied to Quinn. SPD's sending a team. "How clean is it?" Evelyn asked, already moving. Maya fell in beside her like a second line of thought. "As clean as men like him believe they are," Riley said. "Text me when you're close." They crossed back through the station and out to the rideshare lane. The car that took them north smelled faintly of pine-scented wipe and last week's fries. The driver talked about the Mariners until it was clear the women in his back seat weren't built for small talk, then put on a radio station that played the kind of music you forget on purpose. The river slid out of view. The interstate took over its job and kept them company with the low vow of tires. Maya held the handle above her door and watched the blur resolve into fields, then warehouses, then city again. She didn't ask where Leo was. She knew. She didn't ask how long. She knew too much about time. Seattle rose in blocks, blue water on two sides, glass catching light, the way good watches do. The garage on 4th was a concrete hive with a ramp that corkscrewed toward the sky. Up top, the air tasted like hot rubber and distant salt. A line of metal lockers stood along the far wall, where pedestrians cut through to the municipal building, a convenience for tourists with backpacks and lawyers with briefcases, identical doors stamped with identical numbers. 2 SPD cruisers idled in red stalls. A woman in plain clothes with a star on her belt. Detective Karen Nguyen checked IDs without drama and handed Evelyn a paper mask for the dust. "Your friend says you brought this to us," Nguyen said. "We appreciate not having to chase a rumor down 5 flights." "I like rumors when they come with names," Evelyn said. She passed over Riley's text, the photo of the rental screen, the date stamp. Maya stood half a step behind her mother, present without the impulse to perform. A tech rolled a kit case the size of a small dresser. Nguyen read the locker number, checked it against her sheet, and nodded at the tech. "You're up." The tech knelt, slid a wafer-thin bypass under the lock, and worked without theater. Pop. The door gave an inch. The smell that came out wasn't rot or solvent, just paper warmed by concrete in August. Inside bankers' boxes in gray, 2 wide envelopes with metal clasps, a fireproof pouch that had been bought by someone who reads packaging. Nguyen had the tech photograph everything where it sat, then pulled the boxes one by one onto a folding table. Gloves, fresh bags, numbered tags, work that is more ritual than motion. The first lid lifted on what looked like generosity program brochures. Kids in bright T-shirts, names of partner clinics printed in fonts that tried to mean cheerful. Evelyn flipped one over. The return address was a P.O. box in Renton, the font in the second line misaligned by half a point on the suite, as if someone had taught the software to lie politely. Under the gloss came legal. Grant agreements on thick stock clauses, heavy as furniture signatures that had been practiced until they turned into themselves. The bottom line, where people go to sleep, prepared by Patrick Hale, CPA. The name repeated like a watermark. Nguyen's mouth turned dry at the corners the way law enforcement mouths do when pattern crosses into proof. "Again," she said, tapping the line. Again when it showed on the next. And the next. The second box was darker bank letters addressed to foundations with names that stacked like counties. Pines, Rivers, Oaks. Copies of checks made out to clinics that might have been one-room offices above laundromats. Tax filings with EINs that traced back to papers filed within 24 hours of each other. In the margins, notes in a tidier hand than Grant's rows of numbers arrows, small admonitions to himself. Reuse letterhead. Board refresh. Borrow gray. Autodraft set 6-1. All of it in blue ink, drafted by a man who trusted blue to look civil. The fireproof pouch yielded the weight Evelyn had been hoping for, without letting herself call it that, a ledger black cover metal spiral binding. Inside, tabbed sections labeled with the kind of tidy cruelty that pretends to be efficiency. Targets, conduits, distribution, exit. Under targets, lists. Names, ages, cities, a column for connective tissue. The friend of a friend, the advisor, the fundraiser. A column tagged minor dependents. A column marked guardianship leverage. She read down until she saw Collins Maya. Widow teacher. Trust minor health education carve-outs. In the margin, a score out of 10 and the initials PH. She put her palm flat to stop the page from lifting in the wind. Maya didn't ask to see. Evelyn turned the ledger so it faced her anyway. Maya read the line with the cool of a person standing in front of her classroom while the projector refuses to wake. She didn't look away until the columns were part of her. Nguyen stepped closer, eyes stepping the grid down as if it were a path through dry grass. "We'll photograph and seal," she said. "If the journal's clean of privilege, it lives where judges can find it." A younger officer jogged up the ramp, breath high in his chest. "Detective," he said to Nguyen, keeping his eyes off the ledger like a medic with an open chest. "We've got movement at the North Tower Suites, the virtual office on Spring. Badge access ping from a temp card assigned to a Whitaker subtenant. Lobby cameras caught our guy in a cap going up," Quinn Evelyn said. Nguyen didn't nod and didn't need to. "Box it," she told the tech. "We're taking a walk." North Tower Suites had that lobby smell all serviced offices share citrus cleaner and toner optimism, smeared thin. Behind the counter, a young man with a blazer and no tie smiled like he had memorized 300 smiles and picked number 16. Nguyen showed her ID just long enough to change the air, then tucked it away and let him be part of a story he could repeat without damage. "We have mail slots and conference rooms," the young man said. "Nothing stays long." "Today something does," Nguyen said. She had a way of sounding reasonable that never quite let you get comfortable. She gave the staff a simple instruction: keep doing their jobs. Then she walked the hall, glanced into glass-walled rooms where whiteboards bore the ghosts of yesterday's strategy sessions. In the third room on the left, a man in a navy cap sat with his shoulder to the door, back bent over a small squat hard drive cabled to a laptop that still had cellophane on the palm rest. Quinn. He looked up when the reflection in the glass gave him away. He didn't reach for his bag. He reached for the power cord. Nguyen crossed the threshold without hurry, one palm open. "Mr. Whitaker," she said gently, using a name he liked hearing. "City of Seattle. Let's keep hands where we can all see them." Quinn glanced past her at the exit sign like a man polite enough to excuse himself. 2 more bodies filled the doorway. The room got small. "Am I being detained?" he asked, and tried to smile like he had attended a seminar. "You're being invited to stop before you make your day worse," Nguyen said. "Hands." He complied. Up close, the cap was cheap. The sunglasses on the table were not. The hard drive whirred softly to itself, small and self-possessed, the kind that goes anywhere in a jacket pocket and takes all the wrong things with it. Nguyen nodded at the whir. An officer pulled the plug as if he were closing a mouth. "Phone," Nguyen asked. "In my bag," he said, honest about the thing he could afford to be honest about. The officer lifted the flap. Inside chargers, a zippered pouch, a phone with no case, its SIM tray scarred from too many swaps. A wallet with 3 IDs and 3 different names, and the same face aging sideways. Maya, watching from the hall, caught the smell of hot plastic. She folded her arms because her hands needed a job. "Mr. Whitaker," Nguyen said mildly, "you have the right to stay exactly as smart as you think you are. You can also talk. People who talk are sometimes remembered differently." Quinn's throat moved once. "You could watch the math years shaved off a sentence equal to the number of names you sell plus the number of doors you open." "I'm not your guy," he said reflexively, despite being exactly their guy. "I carry cases. People hand me envelopes. I don't read." "Say the name," Nguyen said. Quinn stared at the floor a moment too long to be brave. "Hale," he said. "Patrick Hale. He feeds the papers. He feeds the board. He makes us look like church." "Us," Nguyen asked. "Grant," he said, "because names are currency and some spend easy. And whoever Hale decides is this year's clean face." Nguyen let the silence take shape until it resembled an answer. Then she stepped back and let the officers do the handcuffs the way they always do, neither cruel nor kind efficient as tying a shoe. The sunglasses went into an evidence bag and lost their glamour. The hard drive sat on the conference table like a small dark book. In the corridor, Evelyn leaned against the cool glass of a framed evacuation map and let her forehead find a square inch of quiet. Maya stood beside her shoulder to shoulder. Their reflections looked stable enough to appear in a brochure. Riley found them before the adrenaline could dissipate. He'd shaved since morning and cut his finger on something that hadn't been polite about it. "Locker's a gold mine," he said softly. "The ledger reads like a syllabus. Hale's on everything that matters. He's been wearing your family's paperwork for years." Maya turned her head. "Richard," she said. Not a question, not a lament, a coordinate. "Looks that way," Riley said. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw. "Hale's a CPA with a taste for structure. He's the one who suggests protective language in trusts that makes later theft look like care. He's been counsel of record on 2 of the shell foundations. The board rosters are mannequins. When you kick the base, they fall." Down the hall, Quinn's voice colored into compliance, a small man trying on the sound of usefulness. Nguyen listened without nodding rote, without breaking the line of her mouth. The hard drive cooled another degree. Evelyn's phone vibrated where she had tucked it inside her jacket's inner pocket. Unknown number. Portland area code. She let it ring once, twice, then put the phone to her ear and said nothing first. Evelyn, a pleasant male voice, said that particular middle-aged confidence the suburbs breed. "Patrick Hale. We haven't had the pleasure, but I think we keep a similar calendar. I handle returns and filings for a number of folks you care about." A pause, as if to let the word care do small domestic work. Maya reached out about formalizing a gift. "I'm on the east side this afternoon. Thought I might stop by to get signatures off your dining table so she isn't running across town." Evelyn looked down at her hand. The crease of her palm was dark with dust from the locker. "You have my number," she said. "Comes with the service," he said, genial, as if customer loyalty were a virtue. "Are you home?" Evelyn didn't fill the space after his question. "I'm home," she said finally, and named a time. When the call ended, she sent Riley one sentence with her address and slid the phone into the pocket of her denim jacket. The fabric held the weight close to her ribs. By early evening, the house had settled into summer heat. The fan in the hallway ticked at the end of each rotation. On the refrigerator, Leo's magnet alphabet made nonsense words in 2 crooked rows. Maya set 2 glasses on the counter and stood there with her palms flat, as if steadying the room. The doorbell chimed exactly once. Patrick Hale had the look of a man who knows his way through other people's kitchens, light gray suit cufflinks, quiet smile measured so as not to bruise anyone's day. He carried a leather portfolio with corners as neat as his hair. "Ms. Brooks," he said, warmth pitched to neighborhood. "Maya, thank you for making time." He didn't ask to come in. He arrived across the threshold like someone crossing a property line he had researched. In the dining room, he placed the portfolio on the table that still held a small stain from a birthday cake 4 years ago, and laid out a stack of signature pages, already flagged with repositionable tabs. A blue pen appeared in his hand, as if the pen belonged to the gesture rather than the other way around. "Simple things," he said. "Clean up on beneficiary language. A donor direction for Pinebridge housekeeping on the classroom initiative we discussed." He looked up at Maya instead of Evelyn. "Teachers are my soft spot." Maya didn't sit. "I don't sign without reading," she said. "I'd worry if you did," Hale replied, amused, unthreatened. "Please take all the time you like." Evelyn touched her pocket once the phone screened dark against denim and pulled a chair back with a small scrape. She kept her voice cordial. "Your name sits on a lot of paper, Mr. Hale." "Fewer than you'd think," he said, aligning his pages. "People assume everything requires a signature. Most of my work is advising." "Prepared by Evelyn," said, mild as a weather remark. "Pinebridge, Rivers and Roads, Oak Valley. Ions that look like cousins." The smile narrowed a fraction. "We build platforms," he said, as if explaining a deck. "Good programs need bones." "Who sits on the board?" Maya asked. "Community folks," he said easily. "Rotarians, retirees, a pediatrician who's forgotten more about billing than I'll ever know." Evelyn slid one of Riley's prints across the wood, a page with the Pinebridge header, and "Prepared by Patrick Hale, CPA," underlined at the bottom. She didn't say ledger. She didn't say locker. She watched his eyes take in the font, then the underlining, then the angle of the photograph, and watched calculation step through the same doorway he had used. "Paperwork travels," he said, gently acknowledging nothing, "and photographs are very patient." Quinn was less so, Evelyn said. Hale cocked his head, the expression men borrow when they want to register something without owning it. "Quinn carries bags," he said. "He's a pair of shoes. Pairs of shoes do not make decisions." "Who does?" Maya asked. The pen stilled in his hand. When he spoke again, his voice was unchanged, but the room understood the shape beneath it. "People ask me for structure," he said. "They arrive with grief, or with money, or both. I give them a way to keep their hands clean." "And when that structure moves money from accounts to shelves?" Evelyn asked quietly. He considered her the way a surgeon regards a chart. "Language is a tool," he said. "So is timing. So is trust." The second hand on the kitchen clock crossed 12 with a soft plastic click. In the pause, it made a car rolled past outside a neighbor called a dog, and the fan ticked. Evelyn drew the blue flagged page toward her and read without skimming. The clause about earmarked classroom initiative, the clause about immediate transfer upon acknowledgement of receipt, the signature line with "Prepared by" beneath, neat and unflustered. She set the page down and folded her hands. "You know Richard's handwriting," she said. Hale's eyes flicked once to the refrigerator, where a small photograph, Richard with Leo on his shoulders, was held up by a spice jar magnet. "He kept clear books," Hale said. "I respect clear books." "You studied him," Maya said. "You studied me." "A professional obligation," Hale said. He lifted the pen and tapped the page with the softest click. "Detours are costly. We minimize them." Evelyn stood. The denim rasped lightly. "Not tonight," she said. Hale's smile stayed. The muscles behind it didn't. He closed the portfolio with both hands, a clean, polite sound. When he straightened, his right hand stayed near the latch a beat too long. The metal glint there wasn't pen blue. "Please don't," Evelyn said. Her voice didn't rise. "In this house we use our voices." Hale's hand left the latch. He inhaled and exhaled through his nose like a swimmer adjusting to a colder lane. He turned his head as if to set words in order and looked past Evelyn toward the doorway. Detective Nguyen filled the frame with a badge at shoulder height and 2 uniforms quiet behind her. The door from the porch was still ajar. The evening light cut a long rectangle over the dining room floor. Nguyen's tone belonged to kitchens. "Mr. Hale," she said, "City of Seattle by way of Multnomah County. We'd like your cooperation while we look at some papers with your name on them." He glanced once at the portfolio, once at Maya, once at the open door, and found no space inside those glances. He set his palms on the table, the posture of a man leaning into an argument, and then maybe the oldest survival instinct flattened them a little more. "Am I under arrest?" he asked. "You're being careful," Nguyen said. "So are we." The uniforms crossed to him without noise. The portfolio went into a bag with a white zipper. The blue pen stayed on the table. Hale didn't resist. It wasn't in his training. On the way past the refrigerator, he paused, but only because the officer in front slowed to clear the hallway. The photo of Richard and Leo didn't shift. The alphabet magnet spelled QFJTK, and something that looked almost like a word if you stood at an angle and wanted it to. The door closed on the evening and the room regained its shape. The fan ticked. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler rattled to life. Evelyn sat again, because chairs are for sitting, and put both hands on the wood that had served hundreds of dinners and a few arguments and one negotiation that never got to signature. Maya took the glass she'd set out and drank. She didn't say anything for a while. When she did, it was only to ask, "Do you want the porch light on?" "Leave it," Evelyn said. They stood at the sink together, not hurried. Water ran over 2 cups and the blue pen. In the front room, a toy car clicked against baseboard where someone had left it mid-race. The house took a normal breath. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.